Hello, hello. How is everyone this evening? This is Geraldine Wilkins, the Living Water Quilter, here for another Quilt Conversations. And we are going live today on Amazon. We're going to talk about machine quilting tools. There are so many machine quilting tools, and we are going to dive into just some of the few just to get started. We're going to talk about needles and thread and other things that have to do with machine quilting. Hello to my friends on YouTube. Hello, Sherry. Hello, Copper. Hello, Cassie. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. How was your week? Did you have a good week? This is an exciting time. I am just thrilled to be here on Amazon to share with you some of the things that I just love. I love free motion quilting, and I know you ladies do too. Hi, Marcia. Hello. Hello to the ladies on Facebook too. If you are interested, you can join me on Amazon. You can go to the link tools.livingwaterquilter.live to go directly to this live stream. So I hope you can join me. We're going to have a good time talking about machine quilting tools. And just to get started, tell me, what are your favorite needles? When you started machine quilting, and specifically free motion quilting, what kind of needles did you use? What kind of needles? Did you think about needles and the size and whether it was important to have the right size with the right type of thread? We're going to talk about that tonight. So I hope you can join me. We are going to have a good time talking about threads, needles, some machines that I use. We're going to look at a couple of little mini videos. I want you to be on a road to successful machine quilting. And part of that is having the right tools. That's why this is called Quilt Conversations Live Tool Time. We're going to talk about tools for success. These are the tools that I use. I use them because they do what I need them to do. They help me to have repeatable success. We don't want machine quilting to be a guessing game. Do you want machine quilting to be a guessing game? I don't. I want to be able to have fun in machine quilting and get the results that I want. And those results, I want them to be consistent. I want to know that when I sit in front of my machine and I load the thread and I put in the needle and I have all my different tools, that when I sit down to quilt, free motion quilt, I'm going to have the right results and good results so that I can have fun. I want to enjoy it. So I am going to share with you first first in the chat, let me know what needles you use for free motion quilting. What are your favorite needles? What are your favorite needles? Let me know in the chat. Now, I'm going to be looking down every once in a while at my phone so that I can share different things on Amazon and also to reply to any comments or questions that viewers on Amazon have about the tools I use for machine quilting. Okay, any comments there from, hello, Lois. I didn't see you. I'm so glad you're here. Copper uses 80-20 needles. Okay, and Marcia, what kind of needles do you use? Sherry, whether it's your long arm or your sit-down machine, needles are important. How do we choose needles? All right. Hello, Benita. How are you? How is everyone? Hello, Lindsay. So glad you're here on Amazon. Welcome. I can't wait to know if you are starting to have an interest in machine quilting. I'm so glad you're here. We are going to talk about needles first. And the needle that I like to use, and now I've done some research, and the needle sizes depend on our thread weight. I use and like Superior Threads titanium coated top stitch needle. Now I use others, but the first one that I've picked up and I've learned to like is this one by Superior Threads. Let me turn on my overhead camera here so you can see what I'm talking about. Here is the Superior Threads needle. This is a variety pack that I get, and suggest that if you've never tried these needles before, that you get the variety pack because it has several sizes: 70-10, 80-20, 90-14 size needles in this pack. And I like this pack because what I can do is sample the different needles with the various threads. Now, Copper, you said that you like to use 80-20, 80 needles. What size weight thread do you use with 80-20 needles? Who knows? What size thread do we use? And then someone says they Smets needles. Great, Copper. That's fantastic. Let me just say hello, hello. Let's see. I want to, okay. All right. Who knows what size needle we use with an 80-20 needle? There's 70-10, 80-20. All right. Who knows? 50 weight thread. Correct. That's right. So we have 70-10 needles for 60 weight thread. We have 80-20 needles for 50 weight thread. 90-14 needles for 40 weight thread. And I'm going to show you some of those thread weights that I like to use. The 60, the 50, and the 40. I'm going to show you those tonight. But in addition to the Superior Threads top stitch needle, I also like to use Smets top stitch needles. Now, why do I like a top stitch needle for free motion quilting? Did you know that a top stitch needle has a longer eye? The eye where that thread goes through is a little bit longer, and that is fantastic for fast action free motion quilting. That's right. So here is the Smets needle. I'm going to highlight that on Amazon, and I'll give you an overhead view for those of you who are not familiar with it. Copper is familiar with it. This is the Smets Sharp Microtech Sharp needle. This one I have, you know what, let me clarify. I use two different types of Smets needles. This one in my hand is the Microtech Sharp needle, and it's also good for free motion quilting. But you can also get a top stitch needle by Smets. They make excellent needles for free motion quilting. How many of you use a Microtech Sharp needle? How many of you use this type of needle when you are free motion quilting? Hello, hello, Monica. I'm so glad you're here. Hello. Hello, Joan. How are you? Awesome. Now, here is the Smets needles in the bulk pack, and this is the needle that I like to use for piecing. Let me show that to you in a close-up. This is a large pack of Smets needles. They're the 80/20 needles. Can you see that number? 80/20, and I use this for piecing as well as free motion quilting. I love Smets needles. So superior threads, top stitch needles, as well as Smets needles, and the Smets in both top stitch and Microtech Sharp. Now you're probably wondering, what is this magazine that she has here? This magazine has this quilt behind me. You see this quilt behind me? It's called Right Angles, and it appeared in Quilt Maker magazine. You can get Quilt Maker magazine by the issue on Amazon. It's available, but I have a quilt that you see behind me, Right Angles, is in this magazine. This is the May-June 20 issue, May-June 2020, last year, issue of Quilt Maker magazine. And Right Angles is on page 38. No, 38 and 39. 38 and 39. There it is. If you want to make this quilt behind me, let's take a look at it on the overhead camera. Right Angles. Isn't that a very modern quilt? What do you ladies think of that? So, Copper, you didn't know about top stitch needles. I'm glad that now you know. I use top stitch needles. I love them. I do suggest that you test needles. When you are on your free motion quilting journey, you want to test needles. You want to make sure the needle that you ultimately use is going to give you the results that you want. So you want to go out and test. Test these different needles. All right, you like the quilt. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you so much. It's really a fun and modern. What do you think about that little touch of red in the quilt? I also put a little touch of red right here in the binding. Right here in the binding. I don't know if you can see that in the overhead image. But it's nice to add a little fun touch. And guess what? This pattern is actually beginner friendly. It's a beginner friendly pattern. Hey, Wilda, how are you? How are you? Hey, I'm so glad you're here. Hello, Wilda. Let me see if I can get this up. All right. There we go. Done. Now, did I highlight for you the magazine? I guess I didn't put it in the carousel. Sorry, ladies, I did not put that up there. It was at one point. But I've talked to you about needles for domestic machines. The Smets needle, the Superior Threads needle. All these needles are for domestic machines. This machine over here, this is my sit-down Juki machine. And that is a long arm. It needs to have different types of needles. Different types of needles. That machine looks like this here. Let me show that to you. That's the Juki sit-down long arm. And it requires different needles. I use Grospecker needles. I use 2 different sizes for that. Let me get a close-up view of the needles. There's 2 different sizes that I use. I use 18 and I use, there we go. Oh, here's the overhead. I use 18 and size 16 Grospecker needles. These are for industrial machines. These are for long arm machines. Size 16 and size 18. You can get them in a large pack. You can buy them with, there are 10 needles that come in this pack, but you can also get a pack of 100 and then you're all set. That's what I do. I just get the whole pack and I love these needles. I use the 18 for general quilting on most fabrics, but I use the 16 needle when I'm quilting batik fabrics. How many of you ladies have a long arm? Do you have a long arm? What needles do you use? I love Grospecker needles. These needles are fantastic. Love these needles. Okay, Bernina long arm machine, regular sewing machine. Okay, Sherry, you've used a 16 and 18 on your long arm. Good. Have you had good results with that? Have you had good results? And Marsha, thank you. You like the red inside the quilt, huh? In this quilt, right angles. It's just a nice little pop of color. And, you know, that could be purple or it could be green. Whatever your pop of color is, you can do that, which is nice about this pattern. You always like something a little bit different in a quilt. Yeah, thank you. Awesome. All right. You have a sit-down long arm and you use a Bernina. Okay. You're welcome. Sherry on the tip for the batik fabrics. Yep, size 16. Now, you have to make sure to get the right needle system for whether you're a sit-down or a long arm machine. Make sure you're getting the right needles. When you don't get the correct needles, you're going to have problems. You're going to have breaking, your thread's going to break. You're not going to have good stitching quality. So make sure you get the right needles. And so I have the right needles for my machine, for my sit-down machine that you see over here, this Juki. So the needles that I'm showing you, these needles are specifically for my Juki. That 134, 135 by 5, and DR, and the R at the end. You see that here, that R. Let me get my little pointer. These numbers are all important. You have to make sure you get the right needles for your machine. Okay, ladies? All right. Marsha, you said you have a mini machine. What's a mini machine? I'm not sure what that is. What is a mini machine? All right, so we've talked about needles. Let's talk about thread. Let's talk about thread. I have a basket filled with my favorite free motion quilting tools. So we're going to talk about different thread weights. And so let's start with the smallest thread, which is a higher number. It's 60 weight thread. And that is this one from Bottom Line 60 weight thread. I love this thread. It's fantastic for filling up a bobbin. You get a lot of thread on one bobbin. Let's go to the overhead camera. And of course, you can get it in different sizes. This is the large. So here's the large spool, and it's very, very thin but very strong thread. Very thin but strong. And when I say thin, I'm talking about the weight of the thread. Let's see if I can get this open. Well, maybe not. Let me try the other one. That one. Yeah. Here's the smaller spool. This is the smaller spool. And this one is 1,400 yards. And this larger one is 3,000 yards. A lot of thread on this one. The large spool of bottom line, 60 weight. And just so that you can see how lightweight it is. Can you see how lightweight? It's sturdy, it's strong, it's great. I love to use it in the bobbin. Bottom line. And this one, I don't know if you can tell, it's really a gray color. It's gray, and it's one of my favorites for free motion quilting in the ditch. I love this one for free motion quilting in the ditch. This is a very thin but durable thread. When you stitch this in the ditch, it just gets buried right inside of the seam. You don't even see it. It's perfect for stitch in the ditch. 60 weight bottom line thread by Superior. This is 60 weight. I love this thread, and it comes in a lot of different colors. And so I will use it when I want a very gentle texture on the back of my quilt when I'm using it in the bobbin. How many of you use 60 weight thread? Okay, someone has a question. Do you use the same thread on top and the bobbin? Yes, sometimes I do. I'll use the same thread on the top and the bottom. But a lot of times I will use a heavier weight thread on the top, a 50 or 40 weight thread on top, and I'll use bottom line on the bottom in the bobbin. So sometimes I will mix the two. I like to use it. Bottom line thread is fantastic. It's by Superior Threads, and you can get it in different sizes. And when I'm looking down at my phone so I can highlight these on the carousel in Amazon. So Superior Threads, bottom line 60 weight thread. And let me share this little tip with you. As you experiment with threads, remember I talked about having repeatable success? I basically use only 3 different weights: 60 weight, 50, and 40. And I use 60, the bottom line, and 40 weight mostly for free motion quilting. 50 weight I use for piecing my quilt top. What is your practice? Do you like heavier weight thread or lighter thread like 60 weight? Do you use it? Let's see, any questions? Waiting for pizza. That must be Wilda. Wilda is probably making pizza tonight. I bet. Okay, so what other questions do you have about thread? So I've talked about 60 weight thread. Let's look at the next one that I like to use. Oh, let me show you this. This is also 60 weight. Remember I told you that you can get bottom line in different colors? You can. This is an example. This is red. This is bottom line in red, 3,000 yards. Fantastic. I love bottom line thread. And so I have it in multiple colors that I use in my quilts. All right, so Let's see. What else do I have in my goodie? Here's my 50 weight. I forgot. I have this basic collection. And it's basic because it's neutral threads. Neutral threads. This is by Aurifil, the basic collection. And you will notice that my collection is almost empty because I'm using the thread. But you can see some of those basic, well, these aren't basic colors because I bought these separately and because this case comes with the collection. And when I buy additional spools, I can use the case to store my extra threads. But these are part of the basic collection, these lighter colors, these neutrals. Okay? Basic collection. It has 12 different spools. I like Aurifil thread. Let me go to the overhead camera. $50 weight Aurifil cotton. Now this is a cotton thread, and I should have mentioned that with the bottom line. The bottom line is a polyester thread. Aurifil 50 weight. This is a cotton thread. The cotton thread. Do you like cotton threads or do you like polyester? Do you like both? Do you mix and match? What do you use in your quilts? So again, these are part of the basic collection. The case comes with it, and you can use the case to store, like I have, threads that you buy later on. Okay. All right. You prefer cotton thread like Aurifil, because you did mention Aurifil on your initial response. Thank you, Copper. You can also get Aurifil thread in a package of 3, or you can get it in this 12-pack, or you can buy them one at a time. It's up to you. Cotton or polyester? Monica only uses polyester. She's tried cotton and could not get a good stitch with free motion quilting. That's interesting to note. I wonder why that is, Monica. Maddie likes cotton. Bottom line thread made of cotton. Good question, Copper. I guess I just saw that question and I'll answer it again. Bottom line is not cotton. It is a poly thread. Let me put on my glasses, getting into that season of life where my eyes are changing. This is lace white. Let me check on here. Yes, one thing I like about Superior Threads is that they give you a lot of information on their spools. So this one, it does say it is 60 weight polyester. I was correct, but I wanted to double check and make sure I was correct on that. Okay, so what else? So we have a lot of ladies who like cotton thread. But then there's some that like poly. All right, cotton or poly. Hello, Jacqueline. Welcome, welcome. That just brings me to another point. A part of this session about machine quilting tools is so that you can know your preferences. What is your preference? And if you haven't tried different threads, then it's to experiment, to match the right needle with the right thread weight, needle size to thread weight, and practice different stitching techniques with that combination and see what you like. I have over time tested several, and I recommend you do the same. I like thread that has a slight sheen to it. If I'm going to spend a lot of time on free motion quilting, I want people to see it, right? I want them to see the texture. I want the light when it touches the quilt for it to dance across the surface of the quilt. So I like to use glide thread. That's the next thread I want to highlight. Glide thread is a beautiful thread that provides beautiful sheen. Now, we've talked about 60 weight, bottom line. We've talked about 50 weight, this cotton by Aurifil. Now we're going to look at my favorite that I use for most of my free motion quilting. But again, remember, this is my preference. You have to decide what is your preference. What do you like? I love these threads. These glide thread comes in two sizes. This is the small, this is the large. And of course, it comes in a lot of colors, right? Look at this beautiful, beautiful purple. Isn't that gorgeous? Magnifico. I like Magnifico too. That is a gorgeous thread. I like that one. A lot of superior threads are gorgeous. I've used Magnifico on Monica. It also has a nice sheen to it. And here is the large spool. You see the two different sizes? The difference. This is a 40 weight thread. Let's see what a 40 weight thread looks like. Notice that I'm pulling on the bottom of the thread. That's because it opens up on the bottom. That's how you store the thread after you're done, so it doesn't unravel. This is what 40 weight thread looks like. You want to see that next to the 60 weight? Let's look at the 60 weight. Can you see the difference? The small thread, 60 weight, does last a long time. You get a lot of quilting out of that. Okay. All right. So, can you see the difference between these two? Between the 40 weight and this 60 weight thread? So remember I said that I like to use this 40 weight on the top and the 60 weight on the bobbin, on the bottom. And Aurifil, of course, again, comes in a lot of different colors. But look at that thread, that 40 weight. And can you see the gentle sheen in it? I don't know if you can on camera, but there's a nice sheen. It's not too shiny. It's just the right amount of sheen. How much do they cost per item? Well, it varies. You know, on Amazon, you can get this large spool for $12 of glide. And for the smaller spool, it's $9, $8.99. So this one, again, I need my glasses. This is 5,000 yards. 5,000 yards. That's a lot of thread. That's a lot of thread. It lasts a long time. And the smaller spool of glide I wish I could see that. It says 1,000 meters, 1,000 meters. So 1,000 meters on this one, and then this one in meters is 5,000 meters. So 5,000 meters on the large spool, 1,000 on the small spool. I get the large spool. This is the one that I get. The small spool, you can find it in various places. You just have to go and look. It's a good way to find out if you like the thread. Getting the large spool, of course, is a commitment, right? You're going to use that thread. So get a neutral color if you're going to get the large spool to test it out. Okay, but I like this trilobal thread. Beautiful, beautiful glide thread. I think that's all the examples I have of that. Any other questions? Sherry likes glide. Sherry, do you use yours on the long arm? Do you use glide thread on the long arm? Do you like it there? And remember, you can open and close this bottom section, right? I'm going to snap it closed, and then I can pull it open. Then I take the thread, wrap it around, and put it underneath so that it doesn't unravel, right? Then I snap it closed, just like that. And the small spool has the same mechanism. And I don't know if you knew this or not. I should share this with you. If you use bottom line and you use the small spool, you can, there's a gap right here in the spool. There's a little gap. And so when I'm wrapping the spool, because I'm done using it, I wrap it around and I can put it right inside that groove. Right inside that groove. I don't know if you can see that. It looks awfully bright there. There's a gap right in there, so I can finish off winding the spool when I'm done using it and it doesn't unravel. Okay, so what's next? Now that we have we've looked at needles, we've looked at thread, now we want to talk about how we deliver the thread to the machine. How do we deliver the thread to the machine? Did you notice that this spool, the thread is stacked, wound? It's stacked. The threads are stacked one on top of another. It's wound in a stacking order. On this thread, as well as this large spool of glide, I don't know if you can see this on camera, but it is cross-wound. Cross-wound. It's not stacked one on top of another. It's like an X. An X. And you want to feed it a little bit differently. Each one gets fed into the machine differently. Did you know that? Let me know in the chat if you know how thread is fed into the sewing machine. With these large spools, most machines, domestic machines, can't use these large spools. So I like to use a thread stand, and I love this thread stand. This is my favorite thread stand by Superior Threads. How many use a thread stand? Do you use a thread stand? I'll put this on the overhead. Do you use a thread stand, or do you put your thread in your machine? Which one do you do? Which one? I'm curious. This is the Superior Threads thread stand. I love this stand. You see this metal rod? That's where this large spool of thread goes right on top. Right on top. And then you have these different caps and thread stabilizer. Here's another smaller cap. Okay. You know what? I'm going to go and get my thread stand that's sitting over there on my machine. I'll be right back. Okay, that didn't take long. Here I am. Let me go back. So here's my thread stand, my Superior Threads thread stand. This is the metal piece I just showed you where you put the thread on top. You have this flexible arm so that you can guide the thread from the bottom up through this hole. There's a hole here at the top. See the hole? Thread comes up there and then into this guide, and then to your machine. So this can be adjusted to wherever you need it to be. I love this thread stand. Now, you're wondering, how do you use this thread on this stand? And here is one of the best parts about this stand is that this unscrews. Let's see if I can get it off. Maybe it's too tight. There we go. I unscrew this. Okay. And now from a vertical position, it goes to a horizontal position. Just like that. Screws right in. Is that amazing? Now I take my stacked wound thread and I can just slide it right on. Have you seen a thread stand like this before? It's an awesome thread stand, Sherry. I love it. And it's going to feed perfectly and consistently in your machine because it goes from here and it goes up through this hole, like I mentioned, right? Into that second guide, and then it feeds off of this very smoothly. Let me see if I can demo that. And that's the whole thing about good thread delivery. You want the thread to be fed into the machine evenly and consistently without it getting caught. When we have a stacked wound thread coming off the machine this way, vertically, it can catch on the edge of the spool, whether it's the bottom or the top, and it causes the thread to jerk. If the thread is coming off the top, it can get caught on the edge of the spool. Whoops. But if it's coming off like this, it's just going to move very gently off the spool. evenly and consistently. Evenly and consistently. Let's see if that makes a difference on the overhead camera. Let's try that. If you can see it better. Let's see. Put that down. Okay, just for demo's purposes, you see how that is moving? Hopefully you can see it. It's moving very consistently. Maybe not. I don't think that's a good view. Let's just go back to the main camera. So I just love this, and I have one for my domestic machine. It just comes off so smoothly. And you easily, quickly can change it from horizontal to vertical. Okay. Let me show you the back of this because it will give you a better picture, I think, of what I'm talking about. The demo was good, but also here's a good picture. Can you see how the whole system works here? Here's the horizontal and the caps. You can use one or the other. Screw that in. Then it goes up through that hole that I mentioned, up to the guide, and then straight to your machine. And you also get a pin that you can put on the back. How many of you have ever wound thread on a bobbin? You can place a pin in the back that comes with the stand, and you can feed bobbin thread that's been wound on a bobbin through this stand. See that? And then here is the large spool image. You get all these different caps with it for the right size. And this is a cone adapter. That's the bobbin adapter I told you about that you can put on the back. I just think that's a great option. I love this thread stand. It is a good thread stand. So, do you use a thread stand, did you ladies say? Do you use a thread stand? Who says yes? Sherry said she needs one. Where you buy the spool holder, the thread holder. I'm on Amazon Live right now, and so you can get it on Amazon. Join me here on Amazon Live. You just go to Amazon.com and then click Amazon live streaming, and I have all that information here ready for you. I specifically created all of the different things that I'm talking about tonight so that you can see it. I'm going to highlight it again. There it is. It's highlighted. All right. So we've talked about needles. We've talked about 3 different thread weights, the ones that I like: 60 weight, 50 weight, and 40 weight. And we've talked about a thread stand so that we can deliver that thread evenly and consistently to the machine. Yes, you can find the spool on Amazon. Yes, Marsha. Again, these are my go-to free motion quilting tools. They help me get consistent results for the things that I want to enjoy. I want quilting to be fun and enjoyable. I don't want to struggle with free motion quilting. Do you? No, I know you don't. Hi, Sabrina. So glad you're here. I like using a thread stand for this reason, Monica, and here is a good example. Have you ever tried monopoly, a monofilament thread? There are threads that, and there are two different kinds. There's the smoke by Superior, and then there's the clear. I use monopoly, not nylon, but poly. I use these for stitching the ditch and for other purposes, monopoly. These are good for stitching the ditch, but the other thing is that monopoly has a memory. It's a thread that has a memory. Think about a slinky. You know, when you take a slinky apart, it kind of bounces back. That's what this thread is like. When we look at threads like this, when it comes off the spool, it's not coiled anymore. But thread that has a memory like metallic and monopoly, they have a coil. When we take monopoly and we put it on a thread stand, and in this case, this monopoly is stacked wound, and so I would change the pin position and I put it on horizontal. It comes off the spool gradually and gently, right, through this guide system. And about time the thread gets to the machine, that memory, that coil, is starting to relax. So that the coil is not so tight when it's at the needle, because it's traveling from this thread stand up, traveling up through the guides, and then across to your sewing machine guides, and then down to the needle. That's a longer path for that coiled or thread that has memory to relax. And before, I used to be afraid of using thread with memory that can coil. I'd have all kinds of problems. It would start to unravel on itself, and it was just a mess. And so I would avoid it. But now that I have this thread stand, I love it. Great, Copper. Thank you for that. Monopoly on applique. Wonderful. Yes, it's perfect for that. Oh, I'm so glad you now know about stack wound feeding. Awesome. Thanks, Robin. Fantastic. So monopoly, you want to try that with a thread stand. You'll have more success. I love monopoly, and this stand works well. This Superior thread stand works well with monopoly. Monopoly. A thread with memory. It would also work well with metallic threads. I don't necessarily use metallic threads, but if you do, this stand will help you in your success with that. Okay. What else do we need to talk about? All right, I've talked about the thread and the needles, and then why I like to use what, and you're going to experiment. You're going to see what works for you. These are my necessary tools, and I'm sharing them with you to save you time, because we each need to experiment with our own machine, with our own preferences, the things that we like, right? What else do we need to talk about? Storage, thread storage. How do you store your thread? How do you store your thread? How do you ladies store your thread? Is it on a shelf? Is it in a drawer? Is it in a container? I have my thread in various methods of storage. Some are open, like I use Oh, you know what, ladies? Before we get to storage, I forgot. I wanted to talk to you about thread nets. This is important. Why? I'm so glad I remembered. Plastic containers, will to use this for storage, Ziploc bags, plastic containers, sewing cabinet for storage. Good, ladies, keeping that thread hydrated and not dry out by not being in a container. But I wanted to talk to you about thread nets. And thread nets, who here uses a thread net? Hi, Kitty. How are you? It's not that complex. It just takes a little time. And that's why I'm here. Hi, Kitty on Amazon. I'm so glad you're here. We can talk about thread. Let me know what questions you have about threads and needles. That's what tonight's discussion for machine quilting is all about. We're talking about thread and needles and trying to figure out how we can get the right needle, the right thread combination, how to feed it to the machine evenly by using a thread stand. And now we're going to talk about thread nets that helps us feed the thread evenly to the machine. And I use these Superior Threads handy nets. This is the large size. I get the large. And then if I need it to be shorter, then I just cut it if I need to. Okay? So it fits the thread perfectly. What I want to share with you, let's see if I can find this. I'm going to run this thread net video while I talk. So basically what I'm showing you in the video is how to apply the thread net to these smaller spools. But notice in the video there how that thread is winding. It's coming off of the spool and it can get all jumbled on the bottom, and you don't want that. You want the thread not to start to unwind before it gets to the machine. If it's starting to unwind before you're sewing, that's not good. You want it to unwind as you sew. So basically you turn the spool upside down and you put the thread net in the bottom, as you see in the video. Then you turn it over and then you're good to go. So let me try it on this larger spool because this is really made for a larger spool. So I take the spool, I turn it upside down, then I put the thread right inside the bottom, the thread net, and then I turn it over. And I bring it down just to the edge. See how it's just here on the edge? And now it's ready to go. So now the thread will feed off evenly and not unwind before it's supposed to. Okay? Light bulb moment. Fantastic. Yes, I'm so glad. Awesome. Awesome sauce. Awesome sauce. I think that's fantastic. Yay. Yay. So that's another important thing for thread delivery. If your thread starts to look like that, like you see there in the video, you need a thread net. You want it to feed evenly and consistently. I would not use a thread net on monopoly. It works well mostly with cross-wound threads. Monopoly, I recommend getting a thread stand like the one I mentioned, the Superior Threads thread stand, because it has the right mechanism for horizontal feeding. It gives the thread opportunity to relax, for that memory of that polyester thread to relax so that it can feed into the machine evenly and consistently. So I don't use a thread net on poly. Yeah, it did come with it. I've never tried it. Here's what I say. I haven't tried it. You can try and let us know how it turns out. If you have a tip to share with us with using thread nets with monopoly, let us know. I have not tried it. I have not found the need for it, but you can try and see how it goes. I use the thread stand. Okay. You've always used it, Copper. Fantastic. I haven't used it, and I would like to know how that works. I have not tried it, and it sounds like you've been successful at it, so that's good. Yay. We all are in a position of learning, right? I learn from you, and you learn from me. We share our tips and resources to help one another, and I like that. So what is the next thing? Another thing for thread. Before we get to storage, we talked a little bit about it, but I like to use something that I can hydrate my thread, and it's called Sower's Aid. Have you heard of Sower's Aid? Sower's Aid. Yes, Sherry, I do use a thread net with my stand, especially for the larger spools. Remember, I told you I get mostly larger spools. And so when I put the thread net on this larger spool, I can easily put on a net. That just ensures that the spool does not unwind too quickly, right? That it feeds evenly and consistently into the machine. Let me see if I can get this on here. There we go. All right. I need to change this to the vertical position. Oops. All right. That's live video for you. All right. So here it is with the thread net on it, right? And so, yes, I will feed this with the thread net. Okay. Oh, you're welcome, Cassie. I'm so glad the idea with the thread nets is going to help you. Let us know how it goes when you test it out. So back to the Sower's Aid. Sower's Aid. So sometimes our thread will dry out, right? And there are a number of ways that we can help it along. One way is to use Sower's Aid. This is not for thread that is just brittle and just continually breaks. That's just, your great-grandmother's thread. It can't be that kind of thread. That thread is just gone. But for thread that you've had for a few years, and all things being equal, meaning you've loaded the thread correctly, you're using something to help the thread feed evenly into the machine, you have the right needles, and your thread continues to break. You've tested all that, and all the other things are working. I will use Sower's Aid. How do I use Sower's Aid? I apply a little bit of Sower's Aid, just a little. I take my thread and I'll do 3. It's a liquid, by the way. It's a liquid that you apply to the thread. It doesn't change or hurt the thread. It helps. I let it then sit. I let the thread sit after I apply 3 lines of Sower's Aid and let the liquid permeate through the thread fibers. Okay? After it sits, then I will test the thread. Again, remember, I've tested and checked everything else. I have the right thread and needle combination. I have a good delivery system. And I've threaded the machine correctly. But the thread continues to break. So I apply Sower's Aid to the thread. Now, if it continues to break, I will Put 3 more strands of liquid. Let it sit and permeate the thread. Okay? How many of you use Sower's Aid? Have you tried Sower's Aid? Have you tried it before? I love it. It's a part of my machine quilting tools. It's something I use whenever I need it. I use it for both cotton and polyester. Wilda, you've never heard of this before. Wow, okay. Something new. Something new. Sower's Aid. Nope, never tried it, says Cassie. All right. It's great. I love it. It just does the right thing at the right time. It's just the right amount. Okay? That is the last help for thread. And I started to talk to you about storage. And a lot of you said you use containers. And I use containers too. I like to use stackable containers. The larger ones for my big spools of thread. I know you're not like me. You don't have 50 or 60 spools of thread, do you? Do you have that many spools of thread in your thread collection? Let me know in the chat. How many spools of thread do you have? How many spools of thread do you have in your thread collection? Do you like threads that are big like this? Is this part of your collection, or are you using smaller? Turn that off and turn that off. So, how do you store the smaller ones? How do you store the big ones? Big ones, I use a container, a large container, plastic container. And for the small ones, I do a combination of containers, and then I have a stand. Have you seen this thread stand before? You can let it sit on a table with these legs, or you can mount it to the wall. There's screws here at the top, and you can mount it to the wall. I look at this one as a way of getting quick access to your frequently most used threads that you use frequently. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 spots for thread. 10 spots for thread. And there's 6 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 60 spools of thread. How many of you have more than 60 spools of thread? You have about 20. Copper says she has at least 50. Varied. Okay, it all depends. You typically use smaller ones. So what size threads can actually sit on this? Let's see. Here's my Aurifil thread. So the Aurifil thread can sit on there that we talked about. The Glide thread can sit on there. Yep. A lot of the threads. Of course, this large one, it can sit. That's amazing. I didn't think that it could. This large spool, well, no, it can't. It's too big. I was wrong about that. But these smaller spools, 60. Quick access. You have a stand. Great, Cassie. Awesome. You have 2 of these, Monica, and they are small. That's a good, I think they have a couple of different sizes, right? At least. Yeah. When you machine embroider, you're going to have a lot of threads, right, ladies? Okay. I use every other stick for large spools. Oh, okay. every other for large. Let's see. It does help. I guess this bottom portion is helping it to stay on. So there's the largest spool. Thank you for that, Monica. I didn't realize the larger spools could sit on it. 600 spools of thread. Donna, wow. But you do a lot of machine embroidery. Wow. That's, yes, she's the winner. Amazing. There's all kinds of storage bins that we can use to store our thread. It just depends on the size of spool that we use and the quantity. And this kind of storage is great for quick access, right? Awesome. Yay. Okay. This is a rack by June Taylor. June Taylor rack. I have one on the wall. Okay. Open this up. All right. What is next? We are going to talk about free motion quilting. Now that our machine has the right needle and the right thread, and it's being fed into the machine correctly, we are going to do some free motion quilting, but there's some additional tools that we need. We need one, an extension table. We need an extension table, something that's going to help us have a flat surface for our quilt. This is for sit-down home machines, a flat surface for our machine quilting. We want that to be a nice big surface for free motion quilting. And I like and use one by So Steady. It's called the Wish Table. It's big. And you see in the image, there's a drawer for supplies, but I get a nice big surface for my free motion quilting, an extension table. Flat area. We need it to be flat because our hands are going to be on top of that and we're going to be moving the fabric. Extension table. It's a nice size. You see how the free arm, you can see the free arm, but the extension table now extends that table to have more room to free motion quilt. I love the Wish table. It's a large table, perfect for those who don't have a table where the machine is built in. This one you put right on top. This one you can bring with you to retreats. And the benefit of the Wish tables by So Steady is that you can get it for almost any machine. They will cut it to size for your specific machine. Your specific machine. Okay, after we've done that, after we have our table, our extension table, we need something on top of that extension table so that it's smooth, no bumps or ridges. When we, I don't know if you noticed that on this extension table, when that plexiglass comes in contact with the arm, there are ridges. And those ridges can interfere with free motion quilting. So we want a smooth surface. And I use what's called a glider. Have you used a glider before? Let's see. There it is. There's a Supreme slider and then there's also a glider. This is the glider by So Steady. You see how now the Wish table is underneath. There goes the blue drawers, right? This is the Wish table. But now there's this Teflon sheet with a hole in it, just enough room for the needle to go through. This Teflon sheet, a glider by Sew Steady, or a Supreme slider, they both do the same thing. They create a smooth surface across the bed of the machine. I can't tell you how important that is. It's so important to have that smooth surface so that when we have our quilt sandwich, the fabric is gliding across as we move it. There's nothing hindering it from going forward. Okay? A glider or a Supreme slider to make it smooth. How many of you ladies use that on your home machine? So Copper says she uses the Sew Steady extension table. Fantastic. And she says it's her machine sits in a cabinet. All right. And oh, fantastic, Monica. Monica has the extension table in her new quilting room. Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you, Copper, for that. Love your show and tell. Awesome. Okay, some use a silicone spray, some use the sheet. Yes, they do. Sew Steady does have it. It's called a glider, and it's large. I like the large one, and you can trim it to fit your particular machine. So you can go and look at the Sew Steady one. It's large enough that you can fit it to your sewing machine space. Right? You get the large and then you trim it to size. Okay, so now that we have that nice, beautiful glider, we have our quilt sandwich made, we have to find a way to move that fabric underneath the needle. How many of you have had a hard time moving the fabric underneath a needle? When you're stitching those designs, do you use your bare hands? How about gloves? I use gloves. I love Machine Girl's gloves. Because remember, in order for us to do free motion quilting, we need to be able to control the fabric to make those designs. And there's so many different things that we can do. And again, machine quilting tools that I find that are necessary for success. How many of you are glove wearers? Do you use gloves? And Monica uses the Supreme slider most of the time. Fantastic. And Copper uses gloves. I love Machine Girls. And the reason why I like Machine Girls is one, they are lightweight. They're lightweight. They don't cut off circulation. They come in multiple sizes. And let me show you with the overhead camera. They have these nice little grippies. They are tacky in the very front. I don't know if you can see that. That's awfully bright. But very tacky. Let me come back to the host view. Okay, so it's very tacky on the tips so that when I'm moving with my fingertips, I can grip the fabric. So I like Machine Girl's gloves. And I tried, remember, several kinds before deciding on these gloves. So I'm recommending to you what has been successful for me, okay? What about one of these? Have you seen these before? Have you seen this? There's a little grip thing in the back here that grips the fabric. Have you seen this before for free motion quilting? Let's see if I can find it here. There we go. Highlighting it on. Have you used anything like this, a ring? Yeah, the picture on the back, you're totally right, Copper. Let me share that on the overhead camera. Thank you for mentioning that. On the back, you can easily figure out your size. Uh-oh, you're going to see my big hands on the back. Extra small, small, medium, medium large, and extra large. You can figure out what size works for your hand. I'm actually a small medium, but I usually get the medium large. I usually go a little bit bigger. Yeah, I think I'm a medium large. Yeah, medium large is for me. Big hands. Someone said one time that I had piano hands. I used to play the piano many years ago, but that size chart is fantastic for figuring out what size glove that you need. I love Machine Girl's gloves. Awesome. Okay, so have any of you said whether you use this type or have used this type of tool for free motion quilting? Okay, so Lois, you're saying you have a similar one, but it hasn't been as effective for you. Notice this larger area right here. This is where our thumbs sit so that we can grab this and move the fabric. These grippies on the back, this is what grabs the fabric. And then we can rest our thumbs here and grip to move the fabric. Again, it's up to you to decide which is going to work well for you. Are you going to use gloves? Machine Girl's gloves. I like these. Are you going to use something like this? Okay. What about quilting discs? Have you tried quilting discs before? Let me run this video here. You can see in the video, I have my gloves on. And I'm deciding whether or not I'm going to use these discs. These are called grip and stitch discs. You can use it on either side, whether it's the blue or the black side or the blue side, it doesn't matter. You may have noticed I wrote my name on my disc in the video. But if you notice that I experimented and took the disc by the front of the needle. You see how close I'm stitching to the edge? That is so close to the edge of the quilt sandwich that I wanted to see if I could stitch using my bare hands without injuring them. But I said, well, let me get that disc in really close. I end up turning the quilt sandwich at a different angle, and you can see my Supreme slider and my glider underneath that quilt sandwich. But that's why I like these discs, because if my hand is too close to the needle, I want to try these discs. So let's watch just the beginning one more time. You see how close the needle is to the edge of that quilt sandwich? And I'm positioning the disc so that you can see, will it be easier for me to stitch it without getting my finger too close to the needle? You prefer your hands, Donna. I could understand that. That makes sense to me. You've tried it and you have looked to see what works for you. The main thing is to be careful. Be careful. Here are the discs in full action. Check this out. This little Southwest design. This Southwest design is easily stitched. See how I don't have my gloves on anymore. And I'm using the discs to move the fabric. Back and forth. And notice that I'm stitching, going far enough, and then I stop and I shift. Okay, slippery. Okay. These do really well to grip the fabric. I love these discs. These discs are fantastic. And what I like is that this size, see how this is a smaller size? And this one is just a little bit bigger. This one fits in my palm. And this one is just a little bit bigger. And I use this bigger one to put on the edge of the sewing machine when I'm really close to the edge of the quilting area so that my fingers don't get close to the needle. All right. We are going over tonight. I hope that's okay with you, ladies. I know that we usually go for an hour, but I wanted to share with you some of these tips on free motion quilting. These are the tools that I use. I use both gloves and discs when I need them. Okay? I encourage you to try them out and see what works for you, whether they're gloves, and there are different kinds out there. I love machingers for the reasons I stated: lightweight, breathable, and the grippy fronts. All right, we're almost near the end. You see the basket is almost empty. I don't know if you noticed in the videos, I was showing you the free motion quilting foot that I like. And I'll show this one more time. Well, let me show you to you. Yeah, this one is fine, the Southwest. I like an open toe foot. See that open toe? It gives me better visibility. I love the Janome free motion quilting set. I'm going to put that out so you can see it. I'm going to go to the overhead camera really quickly. See that foot, open toe? I love, whoops. Here we go, open toe foot. Love the open toe. It's fantastic for free motion quilting. I love it. If you can get an open toe foot, I highly recommend it because you can see where you're going. It works well for complex designs. It works well because you can see where you're going. You can see how to connect in those more complex designs. Okay, what is next? After that, you're probably wondering, okay, I have my machine all set up, everything is working, but sometimes I struggle with free motion quilting patterns. How do I free motion quilt? Well, let's look at a quilt block and see how you can go about previewing a design. I like to use plexiglass. You may have heard me talk about this before. I like to use plexiglass to preview a design. You may notice that this plexiglass has some red borders. This is actually duct tape. You can get any color you want, but I like duct tape so that I do not go beyond with my whiteboard marker onto the quilt. I want to just mark on the plexiglass. So I have the quilt on the bottom, the plexiglass goes on top, then I take a whiteboard marker and I preview a design. Okay? Because we have our machine all set up, we have all our supplies, our threads, our needles, and now we want to know how do we quilt. And sometimes even before we preview onto our quilt block or a quilt, we want to practice a design. And if you've watched my videos, you know I talk about previewing on paper or a whiteboard. And I love this one. This is a ruled whiteboard mini board. It's ruled on one side and then it's blank on the other side. Blank on the other side. I can practice my free motion quilting designs on the whiteboard. I can practice swirls. And use the lines on the ruled lines as a guide. Easy practice, right? Easy practice. And because it's a whiteboard, I can easily just come in and erase and try again. What do you use to practice? Use paper and pen, or do you use a whiteboard? Do you use one with lines on it? What do you use? Yes, Donna, having a smaller plexiglass to practice just on a quilt block. So you can get 11 by 14 plexiglass sheet, or you can get a larger size. I like to have multiple sizes depending upon the quilting pattern I want to preview. Let's look at what that can potentially look like. So here's my plexiglass. I placed it over my quilt block. And now I'm going to preview some designs. I can try some swirls. And, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just to get an idea of what you want to do. Say if you don't want to do swirls. Say you want to do crosshatch. You can just do one area of crosshatch. Let me see if I can do it with my other hand. I'm just pretending here, just to preview. Do I want crosshatch around this applique? I can just preview my designs on this plexiglass. What am I going to quilt inside the heart? Do I want to do echo in the heart? Echo quilting? Just to repeat that heart shape? I don't know if you ladies can see that. You can get a set of whiteboard dry erase markers with an eraser all together in one set. And then the beauty of it, you can decide, well, I like the crosshatch. I don't like the swirls. So I'm going to erase the swirls and finish previewing the crosshatch. Okay, if my marker will work. And again, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. I just want to get an idea. Let me try another marker. It looks like I'm running out of ink. All right, but I think you ladies get the ideas. Where are the echoes? You can't see it, huh? Let me move it into the white area. There are the heart echoes. You see the heart echoes? It's hard to see it on the plaid in the camera, but that's what I put on top. And now I'm going to erase that because I don't want to do a crosshatch. Instead, I want to do a meander with hearts. I can decide to do anything I want. That's the whole idea. It's the preview, right? Awesome. And by having the painter's tape, it makes sure that I don't go off onto my quilt. It's my warning sign to stop previewing with the marker. Okay. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the right machine. We talked about a lot of tools, and the last thing I want to talk about is that not every machine is made for machine quilting. And so you want to be successful. You want to have the right machine for machine quilting. And I know a lot of you ladies on YouTube already have fantastic machines for machine quilting. I like and have used Janome machines. You see my Janome right here, my sit-down one. I've showed that one to you. But I've also tried smaller ones. I've tried ones like this one in the 2000 series. There's the 2010, and there's the 2000. These are straight stitch machines, perfect for piecing as well as for free motion quilting. Look at all of this space around the machine. You have a big area that you can put your quilt in. And I've done a couple of quilts like this one with one of the 2000 series Juki machines. I've stitched many quilts with Jukis, whether it's the long arm one that you've seen here in my home studio or this one here in the photograph. Beautiful, fantastic industrial machines that work really hard and do it well. Oh, you're welcome, Michelle, on the machines. This is very important. We can't forget. Oh, I'm so glad that you're considering this one. Fantastic. This is a great machine. All right, I'm making a comment now on Amazon Live. I'm so glad that this is one that you're considering. I love these machines. They're fantastic. There's two different versions. You can take a look at that. There's the 2000 and there's the 2010. See that high-speed sewing machines. And here's what it looks like when it was finished. Oh, that beautiful quilting. Now remember, right needle, right thread, a thread guide. I checked my tension. Everything was working well. I did all the tests that I needed to do, but I had the right tools for machine quilting. Okay? And just to be fair, I've shown you what it looks like with this sit-down home machine, but let's look at a sit-down long arm result. This is a quilt that I made. It's called 3x3, and I used the Juki sit-down, the long arm. This is a fantastic machine. If you are going to make a lot of quilts, which I make normally 10 plus quilts a year when I'm making them for magazines like Quilt Maker magazine that I mentioned earlier, or for other publications, or for quilt shows. If you're making a lot of quilts, and it's an investment. All these tools are an investment in you, an investment in creativity. And so here's the photo again. You can see me during the quilting process with my Juki. That's my machine you see in the photo where I stitched this quilt. This is 3 times 3. And every time I turn on my machines, there's nothing like having the right tools and the right machine, the right thread, the right needles, all these things that you've tested. You find out what you like and what works. When you go and sit down in front of your machine, you want to be confident that it's all going to work. If you are sitting down at your machine and you are afraid, oh no, is it going to work? Is it going to stitch? Am I going to have problems? Who wants that? Nobody, not me. I want to have fun. I want to sit down at my machine and know it's going to stitch. So ladies, thank you so much for being here and having this time to talk about machine quilting tools. Tonight, we just talked about thread and needles and machines and other tools. Some of the basic, I think, are necessary tools. But you have to test. See what you like. What gloves you like. What threads you like. And using the right size needles. And is your machine capable of doing all these different stitches? These kind of free motion stitches. If it isn't, and you want to continue with free motion quilting, consider getting another type of machine so that you can have success in free motion quilting. So again, I'm so glad we had this time to talk about tools. We're probably going to talk more about some tools in another session. Thank you for hanging out with me for so long. Don't forget to follow. I hope that you are able to join me, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, but also join me on Amazon Live, where you can see all of these tools. You learned a lot, Robin. I'm so glad. Yay. She's in Melbourne, Australia. Welcome. Welcome, Robin. Paula, you're welcome. I'm so glad you could come. See you next week, too. See you next week, Copper and Monica and Michelle and Lois. Who else was here tonight? Donna, thank you for your contributions, letting us know about all your threads, 600 different threads. And thank you to everyone. If I forgot your name, oh, Marsha, there's Marsha. I forgot about you. Sorry, I'm going through the comments to make sure I say hello to everyone. Ragtha, thank you. Who else? Copper, Monica, Cassie, Maddie, thank you. Thank you to everyone. I will see you next week. Thank you for being here a little bit longer for this tool time. Let me know what tools you get and which ones you plan to use. And I will see you in the next live session. Have a wonderful weekend, ladies. Thanks for joining me tonight.